Hey, 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 yeah, hey, what a time to be alive. I left them for dead, now I'm living right. No new friends, no new advice. That was high then, but we got bigger heights. We got bigger fish to fry. Bet on myself, then I roll the dice. Man, it ain't a gamble if you know you nice.
Welcome back to Dalton a Dream Podcast. I'm your host, R. Amen. We have a co-host now, Mr. Aiden Cossack.
What's going on? Appreciate you guys for people who told me that they loved the last episode. So excited to bring it from here forward, man. It's going to be sick.
And we have a very special guest in the building today. We have Miss Natalie Strong.
Hello.
And you are the very first guest that brought us food.
Oh,
It's the
yeah.
sweetest thing ever. I'm about to cry because I love food.
Way.
But thank you so
I had a
much.
feeling that you loved food.
Oh, yeah. You know, you can see it in my gut, especially on that last one. I was like, oh, yeah, you know I love food. So I'm ready to eat whenever this bad boy is over. But,
Yeah.
but till then.
Thank you for coming on.
welcome.
We
Yes,
got
sir.
introduced by a very special friend of ours, Michael Burrows.
Yes.
And
He's awesome.
amazing. Amazing man.
Truly.
And there's very few people I take recommendations from in regards to the podcast. Any person he sends my way, I welcome with open arms because I have
Right.
such respect for him.
Right. He has a really great demeanor. His motives are great. He's just an amazing man.
Yeah.
And I've always told him ever since the first day I met him, I'm like, man, you need to be teaching a class, a master class on
Yeah.
how to be a man with character and good, morals, values, integrity. So
I
He's a
hope
great
he's
person.
working on something. So he told me he's not going to come on the podcast until he has something. So I'm gonna try to
He
twist his arm
has
though.
a
I'm gonna
lot.
twist his arm.
you
But-
should.
But what I wanna know is he's told me you had a great story. So I want to start from the beginning.
Oh wow.
Let's start from the beginning.
Take it back.
Tell us about where you were born. What was it like? What was family like?
Well, I'm born and raised in Dallas, Texas. I'm from Texas. We lived in Lancaster for like 14 years, so you could say I'm from Lancaster. And so I grew up in a suburban area. It was like kind of like rural before everything started, becoming. Are you
All the new
familiar with-
development. Yeah, born and raised
Yeah.
in Dallas. Yeah,
Oh,
born and
okay,
raised.
okay.
And
So
ours
before
raised in
all
Dallas.
of the development, it was just like fields of things, And
Yeah.
so I went to Lancaster for most of my elementary and junior high and high school, and so life was lifing. I have 2-parent household. My mom was a great support. My dad was such an intelligent and wise man. I've learned mostly
Yeah.
everything that I know from my dad.
I could tell you came from a 2-parent household
Yeah.
before you even told us that. It's just like the
Was
way
it
that you.
food? Oh.
Well, you can. The food, right? The hospitality
Yeah.
aspect of it, but like the way that you carry yourself, like you have like such a different demeanor from like most people. But it's like
Wow.
it's refreshing. Like it's like, oh man, like it's
Thank you.
nice. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I grew up in Lancaster, and then life hit at age 13, and of course we have our own different things that happened. My grandmother, it happened to be diagnosed with something, and she was very sick, and so that kind of catapulted me into like, oh, I believe in God. I need to make sure I'm praying for my grandmother.
Wow.
And so, just like it did that for me, it did something different for my dad. And it kind of like, he had like a mental break of some sort. And so, life changed. I had to get to know my dad over, because the dad that I knew, he was a different dad. And
Right.
so, we went through that whole change. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar. And so I was like, okay. So I had to get to know him. My mom, oh man, she's very strong. We went through a lot of different things within that time frame. And so she really carried a lot of grace to kind of hold us together, because my dad was in a different place in his mind. And then we were trying to all cope with the head of the house. Remember, you lose your head, your whole body, you're
Yeah.
moving around like,
Yeah.
"Wah," so it was a little bit of that. So I had to grow up rather quickly to aid and assist my mom, and just kind of become like the protector. And I had to help my mom, make decisions on buying cars and homes, and I had to become an adult quickly. And so that kind of pushed me into more of an independence. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna really make sure I establish myself very well, work a job, start a business or something, so that I can take care of myself, so that my mom can have some pressure relieved And so that turned into a whole thing. So I had my first business when I was like, maybe like junior high. How old are you in junior high?
13?
Yeah, like 13,
Oh, okay,
14.
14. I think I was
yeah.
14. I was selling candy out of my backpack.
Let's
Let's
go.
go. I'm
I
part of that
love
gang,
Who
it.
else
yeah.
did that? Who else did
Yeah,
you
I
did
never
that
did
too.
it.
I did that too.
I was not an
Oh, my
entrepreneur at
goodness.
heart. I
Okay,
turned into
okay.
entrepreneur later, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll talk about that later.
How did you get your? Because I used to. So I lived in. Well, I'm not. I was totally about to give like the address and everything. But like, there was this apartment complex here, and I'd literally walk like 5 minutes down the road, and like 7-Eleven was right there. So I'd go up in there. I'd like swindle. I'd be like, no, I got like 5 bags. And I had like 7
Wow.
bags, so I'd be
Oh,
paying for
what?
5, taking them to school the next
So
day.
you've been a businessman for a while.
yeah, you gotta increase the profits, man. I got my margins that I gotta keep up with.
Exactly. That's so funny. You know, we did it differently. I asked my mom, I said, Mom, could you give me money to buy candy? And she's like, for what? I gave her the whole business plan. I'm thinking if you could invest $50, I'll go and buy candy. I know where to get it from. We went to Sam's Club.
There it is.
We went to Sam's.
Buying in bulk, I love
Oh
it.
Yeah.
my goodness, it was so fun. So I brought her with me, like I had a car. But we went and we started discussing like what would make sense, what would be the best purchase. I'm like, everybody likes chocolate. We can do chocolate. And so I did an assortment of chocolate, like, you know, Skittles. I'm sorry, Reese's Pieces,
Yeah.
Snickers, and
Yeah.
things like that. And then I had that, and then I went to school.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I'm selling candy bars for $1. They're like, oh, really? Yeah, okay. And then word got around, and nobody went to the vending machines because
Yeah.
they were like $1.75 or more.
You got them beat.
And
Beating the
was-
competition.
Yeah.
I
Let's
was
go.
looking at the prices like, nah, I'm going to be below so I can take their business. And so in between classes, the bell would ring. People would come flying to my locker. And then I would have it I went from carrying it in my backpack to it being a disruption in class, and then I had to put it in my locker, and I would be like, meet me at the locker, and so it was. I'm sorry, I'm getting taken
No, you're
back.
good. This is great.
This is hilarious.
This is like
People
the
would
recess
be-
of like where it all comes from. It's like your beginning
Right,
years.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. This is the beginning years. So people were coming into the hallways from all over, and they were lined up, and they were like, they had the money, and they were like, I want to get this and this and this and this. I'm like, I only have 5 Snickers left. I want one. So I'm passing it, and then one of the guys was like, I have 75 cents. Do you think you can? I'm like, man, just go and get a quarter, and I'll give it to you.
Yeah, go
'Cause
find
it's
that
$1,
quarter,
you know?
man. Come on.
And so he found the quarter, and he came. Either way, that was my first business that I ever started, and then it grew from there. I was very interested in clothing, and so I used to make. We didn't have a lot of money, honestly, guys.
yeah.
I think is that everyone's story?
Yeah, we definitely didn't have like. It's funny you're telling your story, and like I'm
Similar.
watching my story in your story because I
Yeah.
I didn't like make clothing, but I would like I was like the hype beast kid. So like I would go in like buy Supreme, like buy Jordans, like all that stuff, and I literally would take it to school and like I'd pump the trunk of like my 2007 Saturn Ion, and I'd have them like hung up and be like, I got the new drop, like who got money? Yeah, I need some
Wow.
hop up off it. I know you just got paid.
I didn't even think of selling clothes at that time. I didn't. I was just trying to make nice things for me because I didn't like wearing the Jordans and wearing everything that everyone had on. I've always liked exclusive, very unique pieces, and so I would just find stuff around the house and make things. I remember I made a belt with some earrings and a tie with a shoestring. I mean, I was doing all kind of the thick fat ones. You remember those?
Yeah.
The fat boys. They used to call them fat boys. Anyway, I used to do that, and so I got into fashion just to kind of cope with the things that were happening in life. I started to get like really creative.
Yeah.
And so I think by the time I got into, this was junior high, so I was in the band, played the trumpet, I was in, choir. And then I got a call freshman year. Changed my whole life. One of my good friends, used to be friends, she said, we're going to high school and you can't play the band because bands is for nerds. And and so I was like, oh no. Well, what am I gonna do?
I don't want to be a nerd.
Yeah, I
I
can't
don't
be a
want to
nerd.
be a nerd. It's my first year.
Yeah.
And so I had to find another avenue, and so I entered the Madrid squad. So I started dancing with the little batons, and so that was so fun. It gave me opportunity to be creative and sharpen that gift of dancing, and so I was trained in jazz, and so after that,
Favorite jazz artist, real quick. Sorry.
jazz artist. I'm gonna be honest with you. I haven't listened to jazz in so long.
Really?
I have no clue.
I'm on it lately because like I'm big on like kind of weeding like hip hop out of my life because like I grew up like Chief Keef, like
Yeah.
Kanye, like Young Thug, like all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So like,
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
oh man,
Chief Keef.
yeah, I'm 24.
Whoa, really?
So I grew up. So I
Okay.
was born 2000.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I
Some
wanted to
very
get
mature for
the
your
young generation on.
Yeah, I gotta
Yeah.
represent because
Yeah.
shoot, somebody better do it good. You know what I mean? Like we're
Somebody has
making
to do it,
bad
yeah.
picture for ourselves, but like it's so secular and like I'm really like curious to hear your story about like getting in depth with like how you got to know Jesus because that's something that's like recent for me.
Mm-hmm.
But getting out of that secular music, like I've been listening to a lot of jazz because I always like jazz, but like Sinatra, like mainly Sinatra, like that's what I've been on lately. So I was
That's
just
good.
curious, like if you might be in that,
Well,
realm.
as far as jazz, I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I do know who that is. My journey with knowing God, it only happened when I became an adult. I had foundation from my family. Of course, my dad's side, they have a ministry called C&M Ministry, Strong Ministry, and they've been in ministry for 40 years. And we're all from like Kilgore, and it's a whole thing. They are
Let's go back to high school.
typhoons.
Yeah.
We'll
get back into it.
I
Yeah,
want
we'll
to
get back
follow the
into it.
storyline. I want to follow the storyline.
Okay,
So you're in high school. You decide not to go to band.
Why did I do that? I should have stayed. I would have been anyway. So I started to do the majorette squad, and so I did that for a while, and I worked like 3 jobs in high school. I was really pushing the limit, and so I saved up enough money to buy a vehicle, but my mom actually bought it for me. I'm like, man, I have a little money. I can do something with it. And so I just started taking it and putting it in different places, trying to make some kind of investment, which I was a kid. I didn't really know what that was, but I just knew I was trying to do something. And so
You knew you needed to multiply. You were just like, how do
knew
I do
needed
it?
to- yeah, because I was looking at my life and I was looking at how I grew up, and I've always wanted something more than just that, because it felt like, poverty, which it was. And so I just didn't want to live like that, right? And so finally, just to fast forward a little bit, I graduated. I went to what was that school called? Cedar Valley College. And I
Okay.
went to study music, and I made all A's in my music classes except for theory.
When you're a senior in high school, what are you thinking about wanting to do with your life? Are you
I had no
wanting to go
clue.
to college?
I had no clue, one, but I knew I loved music too.
Okay.
So I just went to college, and I was like, I just do music. And so that's what I did.
So you didn't have was it entrepreneur or job, or was it you had no idea?
I had no idea.
No, not even like nothing. Okay, so you just decided to do music because that was what you're passionate about. Okay.
Yeah, I decided to do music because I really liked and I was very good at it. It was easy for me. And I'm like, this must really be something. So let me just try and pursue that.
Like there's like some type of calling. You're like, I don't know, like you hear like it knocking, but you're like, do I answer? Like, do I go for that? And you're like, you know what, why not? I'm young, I can take a risk right now.
Right. And I was like, I got a little time to figure it out. And so I ended up going to college, and I loved it. And then I went to another college, and my dad happened to be the head of maintenance at the college, and we're like, hey, we're doing doing our thing. And so, which that was a funny story. He was like, he wasn't even gonna apply, he wasn't gonna go. And then I just felt like, no, you should try and do it. You're gonna get the job, And so he got the job. And he was like, wow, I wouldn't even have this job if it wasn't for you. And it really was the Holy Spirit, and we'll get into the Holy Spirit later.
Yeah.
And so we ended up at that place, and I just was at a happy place in my life. Things were kind of settling a lot more as far as direction. This is like maybe like sophomore year. And then bam, life changed again. Something happened to my dad, and he had to go away for like 10 years to the penitentiary. And it It was for something that he did not commit, you know. And
Wow.
so it was very rough for me. And so I just completely dropped out of college because I
Yeah.
just was like, I can't even focus. I don't even know. The one person that I know that has taken, you know, the time to teach me, to train me to this, to that, you know, it was like my wisdom, you know, that's my dad, and he left, you know, he had to go. And so that was very uncomfortable for the house. And so I watched my mom go through a whole changing phase, and she was bothered by it, and my sister was bothered by it. It was a lot. I wouldn't say a lot of chaos, but it was definitely some abnormal
Yeah.
life that was normalized. And so
What year is that? Like
this was
vaguely?
like maybe like 2010, 11,
Okay.
between 10 and 12.
So there's already kind of like economic pressures going on like outside that's kind of like leaning into
It was
everything
a
that's
lot.
going on within the home. So yeah, I was just trying to
We're
figure
just
that out.
coming out of that recession. It was a whole
Mhm.
thing, you know. And so finally, you know, I just was like, you know, let me just go and just live my life. And so I ended up working at this place. And even for me, I got into not a lot of, I was at the wrong place, wrong time. And I was dating this guy, and we all got in trouble, and there was a felony and a misdemeanor involved, and it was a whole thing. And so I just kind of was like, I was a little lost, you know, at that
It's your
time.
early 20s.
It's my early 20s, yeah. Thank God, you know. Let me be lost in my early 20s, not my 30s. So, yeah, I was a bit lost. And so when my dad left with this gentleman, it was kind of like, oh, no. You know, I just kind of cling to him. I've been knowing him since childhood. And so that became like, you know, my source of protection in a sense. It was
Yeah.
like a filler for my father. And so, and even when my dad was gone, he was like, don't write me, don't call, like, don't worry about me. Just go and live your life. Because it was hard for him to have to do that time for something he did not
Yeah.
commit. And then you have to have a specific head on. I don't know if you ever been to jail before, gentlemen.
I've never
No.
been to
Or if
jail,
you've
but I've
never
been
to
arrested.
prison before, gentlemen.
No.
It's a
Yeah.
different life.
Yeah.
You know, it's more survival. And so he's like, I don't need anything to get me off of my survival mode. So don't come and see me.
Yeah.
Don't send me. You don't even have to send pictures. So imagine telling your child
Yeah.
that is just fresh in the, you're like, I just turned 17, 18. What does that mean? You know, so it felt like
Yeah.
a sense of rejection
Mm-hmm.
at the same time.
Well, how long was the sentence for?
10 years.
10 years, okay.
Mm-hmm. It was 10 years. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was an absentness in my life as far as a male figure. And so just the love and respect that I have for my dad, I'm like, man. And so, like I said, I ended up just kind of hanging with this gentleman, and that was a 15-year relationship.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
Whoa.
If you add up
15
all my
years.
relationships, it wouldn't even be
Pause.
15 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, aren't you married?
No.
You're not married yet?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were married.
No.
Yeah, so,
Shoot,
well,
dude.
you must be about to get married. Must be really soon.
Me?
Yeah.
No. Complete opposite.
You don't know what the Lord has planned for you.
I'm listen.
Facts.
I've been saying the same thing. I'm like, listen. I know it's coming sooner than he thinks it's
yeah,
coming.
it's
But
coming
like,
sooner
We'll
than
see.
you think.
We
Yeah.
will see.
Mm-hmm.
my longest relationship's like 3 months.
No.
Like, dude, I'm over here listening. I'm like, oh, brother. Like, I can't even imagine. Like,
Whoa, what?
listen,
Oh,
early
my
20s, like you
goodness.
said.
You're right,
Listen,
you're
let
right.
me go through. I
Live
gotta
your
go through my
life,
part. Yeah.
Live your life. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was with him for like 15 years, and that was it wasn't a toxic relationship, but it was
Right.
just like, I mean, if you don't plan to marry me,
Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like kind of like that.
Dating 15 years is crazy.
That's crazy.
Dating 15 years is crazy.
That's kind of like a sitcom.
sorry.
I think that's called common
relationship.
law, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
literally.
definitely common law. It's common law after 2. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I imagine
After
it's just
2
like,
years, it's common law
Yeah.
in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
yeah.
Don't quote me on
Yeah.
that. But I believe it is 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, someone in the comments is gonna like.
It
That's the
is
one thing they're gonna get.
We
mad
get no
about.
comments,
It's like it's
though,
2.5 years. It's like, listen, man, they're gonna come back. One day.
In a year or two, when this is the biggest thing, then they'll come back and
Mhm.
comment. But
Yeah, it was a whole thing. So we were engaged for 6, and we were all together for 15. And so finally, I got to that place where I'm like, I'm older and I'm more wiser now. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I have to leave. I have to live my life. Plus, it was kind of like I was blinded by a lot of things just because, it's been my friend since we were kids.
Yeah. What does that conversation look like at 15 years to be like, I love you, but like I'm out. Like I gotta go.
Well, I'm gonna be very honest with you. So with him, we were, of course, we're involved in each other's lives.
Yeah.
He was an artist, and at the time I wasn't in artistry, but I was in the back end, like helping him with social media and all of these different things and showing up at all the video shoots and this and this and this. And so I ended up just, checking all of the Instagram messages that I'm involved in because I was doing it for a couple of different people. And so I'm like making sure everything is good. So when I'm looking at the screen, sometimes things pop up, but I'm involved in so many accounts, I'm not looking at that particularly because I'm only doing one specific
one
thing.
task at a time.
Right. And so it kept popping up, and I seen that it was him, and he was having a conversation with another young lady, and I'm like, oh,
interesting,
very interesting. And so and this is cross my heart, I'm not even a detective, or I don't do things like that because when I trust you, and that's it. And so that should be it. And so I've never went to Snoop or anything like that. But for some reason, I was trying to push it out of the way.
It
and
kept coming back up.
It popped up.
God was like,
you got to see this. I need you to see this.
No, for real.
Yeah.
Because that very night, I was praying like, I need to know, like, if this is it. I need a halt, because I can't continue to live my life like this, because what's happening now, I'm involved in a church and I'm getting training and I'm drawing away from this life. And so now this conviction of the Holy Spirit is more head on. It's not passive. It's not, I'm going to do what I want to do and then still serve God. No, like I'm being convicted after the nasty things I've done with this man. I'm being convicted after drinking and smoking, and I was like, this is uncomfortable. So when you're in that transformation stage, it's like a transformation from the Holy Spirit. It's different.
Yeah.
It's just so different. It's different. The way that you talk, your desires, things start changing. You start becoming bothered by certain things. And it's not because of anything. It's just because that actually wasn't the right way to go anyway.
Yeah.
So you should be bothered. And so that's what was happening. And I was asking the Holy Spirit, like, hey, you got to help me. You have to give me a sign, because if I don't see something right slap in my face that I cannot deny, the red flag, then I'm not. It's a cycle. I've done this before. I'm not. It doesn't look like I'm going to leave. And so, lo and behold, that's what happened.
Do you think it was maybe like, so your dad goes away for 10 years and it's like, okay, well now, like you said, like my leader, like the head is gone, where am I gonna go? And it's like, boom, like someone manifests themselves in the shape of like, hey, I'm a strong man, hey, I'm a potential like candidate for the leader for the rest of your life. So it's like, instead of being like, okay, maybe I should call it quits early, it's like, well, I want to stay committed to this because I don't have this in my life. Is it that kind of thing?
It was one of those things. On top of that, when I'm in. It's called love without condition. And so love comes with patience. It comes with kindness. It comes with long suffering. And so this is what I was thinking. I didn't get that other half about, love trusts, love protects, love is not rude, it's not boastful. I didn't really look at that part of the scripture. And so this is what I'm basing the way that I'm sticking around for. And then I watch my mom stick around for my dad, and to seeing it all the way through into the end, for a long time, 30 years. So just imagine you see that kind of, I hate to say that, but you see that kind of loyalty when you're growing up. You see that from your mom. You're like, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Yeah.
I watch my mom.
But is that a bad thing? Because nowadays people they don't have that example, so they don't understand they don't understand the suffering, the patience, the sacrifice. But to make that union work, you have to have that. Nowadays, people have the example of not seeing that, and divorces are at an all-time high.
All-time high, yeah.
So, what is your thoughts on that? Because no marriage is perfect. No marriage is perfect, but
no
people.
marriage is perfect.
But
No, it's not.
but what's the other side of that coin?
But the coin is on that side you just said. No marriage is perfect. We were not married. I played the part though.
Yeah.
I played the mom.
So you're
I
operating
played the
as
wife.
if you already are
I
wife.
operated as a full-on wife. Hot meals, and it's not even about hot meals, but investing the money where it's supposed to go, managing this, doing planning for this, planning for that, doing so many different things at the capacity that I could, and
I'm gonna ask a selfish question. So like, now I'm listening to this, like I talked about on the last pod, like I'm taking a year of like single, like not messing with anybody, like I'm not just, because I've had an issue in the past of like being very promiscuous. So I'm learning to raise my identity, and I want to become the man that I know can handle being the leader of a household, right? And can commit to something past 15 years. So to me, I'm like, one of the things that like I've dated a little bit this year, like not like committing anything, but like I'm seeing red flags of like, okay, I don't see that this woman could be like a wife or like what I'm looking for right now, but like, is there a line for women to like show a level of like, hey, I'm willing to do like the things that come with being a wife, but at the same time, like I don't want to give it all away because like you're not actually coming through on your end with the commitment. So I think a lot of guys are like afraid of commitment these days.
Oh yeah,
I think everybody's really afraid of commitment, but
I agree. I believe I know for a fact when it came to him, he did state that I'm afraid. I remember in the car when we were sitting, I was like, what's the hold up? We haven't even planned the wedding or anything. He's like, he was afraid.
Yeah.
And so for the love and respect that I have for him, I said, okay, I can understand that. I can respect that, but there is going to come a time where we have to push forward. And we just left it at that. And so as far as with women and men, I think that it's very important for us to develop a friendship, because that's what you're going to have over everything. Even in a marriage, you're going to have a friendship before anything. And so we should know how to become proper, appropriate friends first. And so when you get to love your friend for just your friend,
right,
then as you grow and she becomes a wife to you, that's going to be a bonus, you know, and whatever comes with that, that's more of a bonus. So if you can just love your friend for who your friend is, I think that's a good start. But I think going in head on, like, I'm going to, make her my wife or this and that, I don't think that's a smart idea.
That's good,
because your motives are going to be from this perspective, and it should just be a pure perspective.
That's really good advice.
That is.
That's really good advice.
It, you know what I mean? I've never really, now that I've gotten older and more experienced in friendship, because back then I didn't know what that was, but now I know how to have a healthy relationship with a man versus it being like, I wonder if she could, instead of looking at it from that perspective, and so sometimes we're human. We have to remember that we might do things because we are aiming for that particular person to be in a particular position, but let's address the position that they're in, master that, and then move. It's like a flower. Let it blossom. You don't just put a seed in and expect for it to right then and become a big, huge something. You know what I mean?
That's great.
So I think people, you're absolutely right. And I think people are on the extremes of both sides, where it's like they're afraid of commitment or they're like trying to get married immediately. And then that balance of being friends, because the best relationships are when your significant other is your best friend.
Yes.
Those are the best relationships.
The best ones, really. If you take your time and you nurture that friendship, you're going to be having your own little things that you do with your best friend, because that's your best friend, and you're going to love and respect your friend when your friend is pregnant and she says, I can't walk, or I can't this. You're going to care for your friend. That's my friend.
Right.
You're not going to look at it like that's my possession or that's mine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. I've never thought about it like that. Or like,
I
I mean, I feel like it's something that sometimes you know it, but you just don't know it.
Yeah. you put the words to it and you go, that is exactly how I've looked at like oh dang, like I haven't looked at this relationship as like a relationship, like a friendship. I've looked at this as like, this is an object, this is a possession that I have that I can just turn off or turn on.
Or I look at it as like, oh, like, because I'm in the mindset of, oh, are you a potential wife?
Exactly.
So that's so much pressure so quick.
It is. And then that pressure makes you, well, maybe I should buy this because, or maybe I should do that.
I should act this way because if that's, and then you just miss the whole.
Yeah.
But you missed it because at the end of the day, you need to be exactly who you are.
Yeah.
And then as you grow, wow, that's awesome. But if you play a role before your time or play something, you have to have a specific grace in a season for marriage. A grace. And scratch the season, but you have to have grace to take whatever position you're going to take in someone's life. So whenever I meet anyone, which I'm not meeting a lot of people often in that because I'm just very focused on business and ministry. But whenever you meet someone of another gender, you have to look at it like, what position am I playing in her role, or I mean in her life or in his life? What position am I playing? Can I commit to that position? So if you're thinking like, I want to be a husband to that person, can you commit to being a husband right now in your head? Okay, calm yourself and go be a friend. Commit to being a good friend, and then let's work our way up to that. And so you have to have a grace to be able to manage those kind of things.
Gotcha.
Like even with friends, it's all management, you know.
So let's get back to. That's amazing. Yeah. So you decide to live your life. You exit this relationship, and where are you at this point in life in regards to business, or what's going on at this point?
At this point, excuse me, I've started. I'm a serial business owner. So right now I have, and they're all starting, still growing, and I'm looking for partnerships within those. But I have a rental company that does cars and homes. And then I also have a fashion that resells vintage, and then consulting with fashion as well. And so, and also right now I'm subcontracted to do some finance management at Kingdom Legacy Company. It's a real estate company. And anything real estate I'm usually investing in. So I have a few things going to keep me pretty busy, you know. And then as far as ministry, I am a minister. I don't know what this whole you have to be ordained or whatever, but I know I minister the gospel whenever I have a microphone in my hand, whether I'm singing, leading worship, or speaking. It's all ministry, and we all are ministers. If we are Christians, we are to give the gospel freely. And so that's where I'm at in my life. And so I'm in an interesting season. I remember when I got out of that relationship, I was one person. And like I said, when you encounter the Holy Spirit and you really say, okay, yes, I'm going to live for you, God. He's like, okay. And he takes your foot and you're like, you're gone. And he's like, okay, we need to get rid of this and get rid of that. And you're like, ow, that hurt. Why did you pull it so hard? You know, you're going through refinement and
the test.
It's I always say I'm a diamond in the process of refinement. And so I'm constantly being chiseled. And if you understand how to create or how to make a diamond, there's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of fire, it's a lot of cutting, it's a lot of, but in that end thing is something that everyone comes from all over to see. They'll pay whatever money to have, you know what I mean? And so I'm in this whole refining process. At one point you will see me wearing different clothing, and my hairstyle was different, and I was just different. But as I continue to go through the process with God, just in a matter of 2 years, he's changed the way that I walk, talk, the way that I think, just sitting down and going through that development. Because look, we can attain all of these things, right? You're a businessman. I'm sure you have, all of these wonderful things that you're doing. But if we skip that development that we need, when everything is stripped away, and we only have you to look at, then how's your character? How is your
integrity?
mind? How is your morals? How are you conducting yourself? How are you?
Who are you?
Who are you? If you don't have all of those accolades, who are you? And I didn't want to be that person because I was so lost for so long. And I had to grow up fast, even though, I grew up fast. There were still some areas that needed some development. And so those areas, the Lord showed me, and we just took our time. I think it was about 6 months to a year. I was like in very, very, very strict scheduling, very strict minimal contact with people, places, things, because God was like, go to work, come home. Okay, what are we doing now? This is what we're going to do today. Okay. Read this, do that, do this. And then he would send other people that he had given grace to aid and assist in that process. And so I joined a program called She. It's a women's program. And we went through the healing process. We talked about the past. We talked about the present. We talked about the future. We talked about everything that I just spoke of with you all that I had never spoken to anybody about in depth. And we worked through those things.
Right.
On top of that, he sent a brother of mine that I grew up with in my church home. It's Global Fellowship, by the way. And I grew up with him, and I watched him soar. Like, he went through the transformation process as well. God had given him a whole download and gave him grace to kind of be like, oh, come on, sis, I'm going to help you. This is what we're going to do. Because I was like, in my mind, I was lost, I was lost. I had went through another relationship, and I was like, that's the one. He's the one. I know he is. And he was afraid. Yet again.
Afraid of what?
Commitment. Or the pressure of being
Are you afraid
bad.
of commitment?
No. I can do that any day.
Okay.
No. Because you find a woman that commits to God, she'll commit to you. You find a man that can submit to God, he'll submit to you. He'll commit to you. So I have no problem with that. It's
That's
just the
why
right
I feel like
one.
I'm not a man yet, is because like I was having this conversation, like I was driving earlier this week, and I was like, man, my mind just starts drifting, every now and then, like, because God talks to me, but doesn't talk to me like that often where like I could hear him. That's like a very rare. It's like maybe like once every 3 months I'll get that moment of like, oh, like he's trying to get me to pay attention right now. So I'm driving, and I'm sitting there thinking, I was like, man, like what if I really did just like overcome these like I'm reading this Goggins book. It's like life is made up of 1 second decisions, and it only ever takes 1 second to take you completely off the path that you're on. And it's like, man, how many times am I gonna let that 1 second be the thing that holds me back from greatness? Like why am I so afraid to commit? And I think we have to go way deeper. Like we have to really look internal and be like, who didn't commit to us that made us say it's okay not to commit to an idea or a person or like a philosophy.
It's like a virus.
Yeah.
Because when you get someone that doesn't commit to you, you're almost like fearful of it, and then you start not committing to people.
Oh, I see.
Isn't that crazy how like it's a virus?
It's a defense mechanism.
It's a defense mechanism
because of that healing that you need, or that it's like trauma in a sense.
And a lot of guys do that where like they go through a heartbreak, and then they're like, I never want to go through that again.
Like women can take a lot of, no, I'm not even going to kid you. We can take a lot of emotional and physical things. But with men, it's more your pride is bruised a little bit. You're bruised.
It's your ego.
Lot more. Your ego is
and if you lose your ego,
you don't.
You
feel
almost
like
lose your
man
like
anymore,
yeah.
You know what I mean? But truly, I don't know. I don't think it's a hard thing to do, as far as commitment. You can do it. You just have to just get your healing so that you can move past whatever that is.
You got to be okay with who you are. If you're not okay with who you are, you'll never be able to commit to a woman. How did you find God?
Oh. Well, I had a foundation of, the religious part of going to church and, all of these different things. And I remember I had an encounter. You all believe in demons?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Man. Okay, good. So you understand. I had an encounter. I was laying in my bed. I think a lot happened at the age of like 13, 12, between 12 and 14.
So this is young.
I was laying in my bed, and I remember I was just minding my business. sleeping, enjoying my sleep, and I was out, but I was hearing some chanting over me, and it was in whispers. And I don't know if you've ever seen those, they make those scary movies where it's like you're whispering but it's reversed and it sounds very demonic.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I was hearing. And the volume kept getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And right before it was like, because I don't know what was going to happen at that moment, but it got so loud to the point where I heard God intervene. And he boldly, Natalie. And his voice just, I can't even do it like he did it, but it was just literally a roll of thunder when he spoke and he said my name. And I remember I jumped out of my sleep and I was in sweat and I was breathing hard and I was like, God, that was God. He just saved me from whatever that was about to overtake me. I don't know if that was like possession that was about to happen. I don't know what door I had open at that time, but there were a lot of things happening in my life. And I remember I got my pillow and blankie and went to my sister's room, and I was like, I'm not sleeping in this room tonight. But thank God I did praise him and gave him thanks. But I got my little pillow and I left and went in my sister's room. That was the one thing that made me curious, like, I know that there's God, but I hadn't had an opportunity to really encounter him like that.
Right.
And so I remember I finally got into the closet and I was like worshiping at one point in my life. And I just remember the power of God fell in my room, and it was very abnormal for me. And I didn't know. And so I just tensed up and I closed up, and I didn't like that vulnerability. And I was like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm crying too much. It's too much of this. And I didn't understand it. And so I kind of backed away a lot. And so I found myself like filling voids in a sense, because I didn't allow him to come in that way. So, you find these vices and these other things. And so that's what was happening. And so as I grew and I ran for the longest, from my calling, which was worshiping and singing. And I just kept hearing this voice, saying, it's a once in a life. It's a one in a million, chance. You're not going to. And so I just laid down music. And at that time, I wasn't even doing worship music. I was just doing music, And so I laid it down. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to just live my life and just do whatever I want to do. And every time I, tried to run away from it, somebody would say, hey, are you still doing music? So it was like a reminder every time. And I'm like, don't ask me. I put it down, I'm done with music. Yeah. And so I finally had gotten to a point, and this is about 6 years ago, five years ago. I was looking for a church home. Due to some church hurt, I stopped going to church for like a year, and I was like, I'm just gonna find God on my own. It wasn't a bad idea, but you kind of need a little help, And so I was struggling a little bit, and then I lost one of my best friends due to kidney failure. And so my life started spiraling within that 1 year of me wanting to find my relationship with God. And things just got worse and worse and worse. And I finally ended up going to a global fellowship service. And that was the introductory to having a real life and knowing God. And so this was about 5 years ago.
Wow.
And so even though I had the foundation of him, even though we had the ministry, we grew up singing, we grew up having every first weekend, all of the cousins would come on our land in Kilgore, and we would have sleepovers, and we would go and minister to the nursing homes and go just bond and put on different shows and direct and just sharpening all of the children's gifts in the family. There was still no personal relationship, and I'm sure you understand that, your mommy or your daddy takes you to church. You're like, oh, we're just going to church, But as far as knowing him for yourself, I didn't necessarily do that. And so finally, I had been living this whole time, and I finally learned how to, walk with God. And it was a process, and it was very, very different from, my life. And so yeah, that's how
I think
ended
God
up in
gives you
his hands.
perspective. Like you talk about like going through like refinement. Like I feel like whenever you don't have God, you kind of view all these things that are happening to you as like, why is this me? Why is this me? But it is refinement. Like, you don't realize that, like, he's doing that to add pressure to you, to make it uncomfortable, because it's where it's uncomfortable. That's where you grow.
Yeah.
And some people all the time, you don't go to the gym for it to be comfortable. Like,
No.
you literally go to break yourself down so that way you can make room to, like, be built back up.
Right.
And that's the process of God.
That's good. That's good, because he wants to break you to a point where he can put you together how he wants you. Because as we grow, I think it's the age of 10, 9. That's when we develop we got it all together in our brains. I figured out how you are. I figured you out too. You know, we've figured that whole thing out, and so we kind of grow up with that perspective, and then God has to come in and crash everything so that he can put you together. And so that was my process. It was very uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable for everyone around me too, because it's like, hey, you're not coming to the club with us anymore. You know, what do you mean? You don't drink anymore? But you are the bartender for the parties. What do you mean? You know, you're not coming. Like, you're the life of the party. Like, literally, I used to be the life of the party. When I come in, everybody's yelling like, yes, you know, Natalie's in the room. But now I'm not even nowhere near the room, because the desires have changed.
Yeah.
So
you're just in a different room.
Yeah, I'm in a different room.
Was it tough to leave that scene and have the pressures of friends and the association? Because it's kind of like when you have those associations, you have that bond, so you're slowly leaving those bonds, and it's hard to leave a bond that you've been building over a period of time.
No, I'm gonna be honest with you. For me, I was so used to people revolving out of my life. They would just leave, you know. It was like, as I grew, I have a lot of favor. I'm not even kidding you. I have a lot of favor with a lot of people, and it's just been like that for my whole life. And so with the friends that I would obtain, they would become jealous of just, you know, random things. Well, how do you know how to do that better? Or why do you this, and why is that, and why do you always get the good things, or the good people, or the good stuff, or this and that? And I'm like, I don't have an answer for you, you know. All I know is I'm willing to share with you, you know what I mean? And so I would find, you know, people would just randomly just stay in my life for a season, and then they would leave. So it wasn't necessarily too hard for me, but it was different coming around those who has known me for a long time, that when they seen the new me, it was just kind of like, or I wouldn't even say the new me, the real me, because for the longest, I have a song called "Don't Dim Your Light," but for the longest, I dimmed my light because it was very uncomfortable, you know, growing up, knowing how to do these unique things. I'm very unique. I'm outstanding, and then some people can't do what I can do, and so I would just kind of like shy away to stay in a certain. I wouldn't try to be the smartest or try to speak too much, or you know, just because of. I didn't want to lose the friends that I did have, because at that time I had realized, like,
you're like, don't dare to be different.
I kind of want these people to stay, so let me just.
Because if you change, they're not gonna like the person. They like who you were, not who you're becoming.
Right, exactly. And so, just even at a young age, I just kind of was like, I'll just, you know, just kind of not be doing too much, you know. And so, when it came time for me to go through the actual process, I just was like, I said a prayer. I remember that day. I went in my room and I said, God, I pray that whoever is supposed to be in my life during this process with you, just allow them grace. Give them grace to withstand what's happening. Give them grace to withstand me not answering the door when they're knocking on it. Give them grace to understand what's going on. I'm living in a whole home with 2 other people that I'm not even speaking to, just because this is the command of God. And at that time, and not even at that time, but that's when I really started taking my walk with God very seriously. Because I realized within my life, I was doing so many things and being so many things to other people. I didn't take the time to be what I needed to be for myself. And so I just was like, y'all will be okay. But they're like, hey, but you used to be the person to do this and that. And so now you're getting, I'm withdrawing, you know, my friend services, or that kind of friend, or showing up for people.
They're not getting your attention.
They're not getting what they're used to. And so it was a whole thing. And so I went through this process of, oh my goodness, it was very painful. It was very painful.
You have to say
Yeah.
no to others to say yes to yourself, because you're so used to saying no to
Yeah.
yourself so long to
Mhm.
say yes to others. It's like,
Yeah, and serving others.
time out.
And it's okay to serve, but it was just like in this season, just let me just
Yeah.
go and develop myself.
Because if I do this now, then I can help more people, and it won't be
Exactly.
as taxing.
Exactly. So I need to be the one to go through these things so that I can help whomever it is that
Mhm.
needs to, come from that place. And so I think that was the hardest thing for me. And those who are still around, they were around then, and they're around now. And so, and they're fine. But it was different. It was different. I was like, I don't really care about how anybody feels, but it was definitely different. At the same time, I was just kind of like, God, just remove those who are not supposed to be and keep those who are.
Mhm.
So
What have you learned with your in business now that you've gotten closer to God? What are some things that your relationship with God has cleared in regards to the business world? And
I believe in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to have that God factor and you have to have faith. Because let me tell you, and I'm sure you all know this, that sometimes you're like, I don't know how we're going to make this payroll for myself. I don't know how we're going to, cut the check for this and that. And it's so many different things and so many different aspects. But I've just realized having that time with God every day and entrusting Him with the day and letting tomorrow worry about tomorrow, that's all you can do.
Right.
Because I'm not God. I'm just made in the image of Him, and I get my commands from Him. I'm trying to please Him, so I have to have faith, and I want to show my love to Him. So I'm being obedient and staying in this place. So whatever happens, I'm going to gauge as much as I can, but I can't let that make me lose sleep, and I can't start worshiping this. I'm made to worship God. So I can't worship this and that and this and that and this and that. It says, seek ye the kingdom first, and all things will be added unto you. I know that I'm seeking the kingdom. But you have given me, what is required to obtain this business. Thank God. You've given me the strategy. Now we got to use the faith, and we got to use the wisdom that God has given us. We have to be very discerning with everything that we're doing, making good decisions. At the same time, there are going to be things that happen. So I'm just kind of like, I'm here, God. This
Faith
is your business.
faith it till you make it.
Yeah,
Oh, I
it's
like
faith
that. I
over
like
fear all
that.
day long. Yeah, so that's kind of where I am within everything. It's truly a journey, and I feel like my life is like a movie every day. I really get to
Feel
get to
that.
do whatever I want to do in a sense, So that's fun.
Who's
but-
playing you in the biopic then? If life is a movie, whenever they make the movie, who's playing you?
Oh my God.
I could already see the title. It's
Who?
Strong.
You have to tell me who. If I actually, no, I am. I'm not. I'm lying. I'm gonna have a movie, a
Oh, yeah.
documentary made.
Of course.
But
We're gonna have like a crossover, like MCU. Like it's gonna be like Avengers. Like everyone like crosses over in like each other's movies.
Yeah.
There'll be
Sick.
clips from this podcast on
Yeah,
there.
there you
that'd
go.
be good. Yeah, I want to do like what Kanye did. I hope this thing is not blocking anything, but I want to
Adjust
do.
it if you're worried.
I
I
wanna
know it's
do-
not blocking this camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do like this. You see mine? Are you able to? There you go.
Oh.
There you go.
You
Shit,
should be fine.
natural.
But
Okay. But yeah, the movie's gonna be called The Diamond.
okay.
I mean, but what do you all think about when you think of a diamond?
Well,
First
I
A
think
thing,
like
lot
first
of
thing.
pressure. A lot of pressure.
I just think like hard. Like I guess first thing hard. Like
Yeah.
like rock solid. But
Yeah.
it takes something to become solid, because it's like I talk a lot about like the state of where men are at these days. I'm like, y'all are not solid. Like y'all are like squishy. Like I can
Yeah.
push you. Like I can push you over. Like that's not solid. Like a diamond is like strong, solid. You can't break a diamond. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you this: after your 15-year relationship, you said that you had another relationship, and you've been going out and meeting men and building those relationships. What do you think the state of men is today in America?
Well, first I'd like to say I really cherish and respect men for who they are written out to play. Like I don't know if the men know, if they really step in their position and take the position seriously, how much the whole world would get in line.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because you are made to lead, right? You're the head of the house. And I know it's scary, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you're with the right one, yeah, there would be grace given for you to, you know, do your trial and error. But ultimately, I think the one issue that we have is the lack of fathers.
Yeah.
And so you see the squishy men, because they've been raised by women, and we don't necessarily know how to raise a man.
Yeah,
And so
I grew up with a single mom.
they don't have, and so if they don't have a proper male figure to look at, they're gonna kind of adopt the traits of a woman.
Yeah.
So you might be a little catty or petty or whatever they call us, you know, or more emotional. But yeah, I think that's the issue. I really think that's the issue. That's the only issue, because the dads don't have the dads, or they didn't have the dads, and so sometimes it can become the excuse as to why you can't do X, Y, and Z. At the same time, I lost my dad for a long time, and so I had to go through the whole figuring it out. And so, yes, you're gonna make your trial and error, but at least figure it out. Go into the Word of God. He will tell you in Timothy how the overseer is supposed to conduct themselves, because you all are the overseers of the family, of the church, of whatever it is. You know what I mean? Just like he has for us. Proverbs 31. I go based off of that. For me, I'm like, no, I need my husband to be bragging at the gate. So let me make sure, you know, I have these, this. And so I think
is that the As a Man Thinketh, Proverbs, that 31?
No. It's
You never seen like, oh, is she a Proverbs 31 woman? Oh, yes, sir. Like, it's like,
what is that?
It's like, this is what a woman should be. Like, forgive me, like, I'm really out of my word the way I should be, but like, my understanding is that it's like, these are the qualities of like a feminine divine woman. But it's like, but you can't ask for that if you're not this as a man. I think that's where we get like compromise and commitment. I feel like go hand in hand, because it's like, I have to compromise who I am to become the man that I want to be, to attract what I want. And if I can actually attract what I want, then I will commit to that. But I don't think a lot of people are willing to do the compromise. If that makes sense.
Okay. This is what we're going to do.
Oh, this is what we're going to do? I like when people say that.
We're going to read
What you got in the purse?
Yeah, hold up.
It's not a gat.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, whoa, we're going to get lit up right here live on the air.
It's not I just wanted to I'm just going to pick a random verse from Proverbs 31.
Okay, let's go. I like this. This is a new segment.
This is fun, yeah.
So, yeah, so that's basically like my understanding, like what a Proverbs 31 woman is. Like, I see like reels all the time on Instagram. It's like, oh man, she a Proverbs 31 woman. I looked it up. I was like, what's Proverbs 31? Like, and like I'm over here. I'm like, yeah, I'm Christian, but like I'm not like in the word.
Okay.
You know,
it's
a
called
process.
Yeah,
it's a process.
It's called a process. It's called.
I'm in the refinement. I'm getting ring around
yeah.
right now. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
It's a whole thing.
I thought that's what I wanted to do with my life.
No,
and like,
for real.
No, it's not. Like, everything you're saying, I'm like, dang, you're just lighting up like the last year and a half, 2 years of my life, like on blast. I'm like,
yeah, you're like, but hey, I wanted to do it this way. He's like, you said you were gonna follow me, right?
Yeah,
we're not going that way. We're going this
Lord.
way. And
whenever
it's hard sometimes. You're like, but I've been running my own life. He's like, yeah. Now I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna run your life. Yeah. That's why it hasn't. Yeah, that's
why it hasn't worked out the way that you wanted, because you've been doing it yourself. Yeah. And I've been telling you to do it with me, but you don't even want to get to know me.
Exactly.
It's like, whoa, wait a minute.
And so that's the part we have to surrender. We just have to do what he says. I'd rather do it that way anyway. I watched myself not, and it didn't work.
It's always easier now than it will be later. Even though, just because it's easier doesn't mean it's not going to be hard.
Oh yeah, it's a process, and it's to be respected. Okay, so Proverbs 31, verse 10. It says, "A wife of noble character, who can find?" Does everybody know what noble is? It's like intelligent. She's capable.
Like, I just think like noble, like she's got like integrity, like like trusty, like trustworthy, like by your side. Like I'd be like, R is like a noble guy to me, because I'm like, no matter what I'm going through, I know like if I hit up R, he's like, bro, you got it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's encouraging.
Wow. I'm gonna read this amplified version. Yeah, that's This is a good friend. It's a good word.
That's my boy. That's my brother.
My
Like,
partner.
Yeah, we didn't even
Oh,
know each
really?
other till like.
We're
I
business
didn't know
partners.
that. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we didn't really know each other till like a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I feel like I've known this guy like my entire life.
Yeah.
That's good, man. When you find a friend, you better hold on to him.
Yeah.
A good person, so like a brother, sticks more than a real brother.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so I'm gonna read the amplified version because it's just
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
now
Hop
in my
off.
element. Okay, so it says Proverbs 31:10 in the AMP. Everybody turn to it. It says, "An excellent woman, one who is spiritual, one is capable, one that's intelligent and virtuous. Who is her? Who is he who can find her? Her value is more precious than jewels. Her worth is far more above rubies and pearls. The heart of a husband trusts in her with secured confidence, and he will have no lack of gain. She comforts, encourages, and does him only good and not evil all the days of her life. She looks for wool and flax and works with willing hands in delight. She is like a merchant ship, abounding with treasure. She brings her household food from far away. She rises also while it is still night and gives food to her household." So she's waking up early in the morning.
I know what that
making
means.
bacon and eggs
Grand
for
Rising.
the kids, yeah. And then it says, "and assigns task to her maids." So she's a great management. She manages the house wonderfully. "She considers a field before she buys it or accepts it, expanding her business prudently." So she makes great investments. "With her profits, she plants fruitful vines in her vineyard. She equips herself with strength, spiritual, mental, and physical fitness for her God-given task, and makes her arms strong. She sees that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out, but it burns continually through the night. She is prepared for whatever lies ahead of her." She's a planner. And she works very hard. That's good. "She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. As she spins wool into thread for clothing, she opens and extends her hands to the poor. She reaches out her filled hands to the needy." Her hands are filled, and she's a giver.
Mm-hmm.
"She does not fear the snow for her household," because she's a planner. I said it earlier. "For all in her household are clothed in expensive scarlet wool. She makes herself cushion, rugs, tapestry. Her clothing is linen and pure fine. Her clothing is linen, pure and fine, and purple. Her husband is known in the gates, the city gates, when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes fine linen garments and sells them, and supplies sashes for the merchants. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and her position is strong and secure." Almost done. "And she smiles at the future, knowing that she and her family are prepared. She opens her mouth in skillful and godly wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue, giving counsel and instruction. She looks well to how things go in her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children raise up and call her blessed, happy, prosperous, and to be admired. Her husband also and he praises her, saying, 'Many daughters have done nobly and well, with the strength of character that is steadfast in goodness. But you have excelled them all. Charm and grace are deceptive, and superficial beauty is vain. But a woman who fears God, a woman who fears the Lord reverently, worshiping, obeying, serving, and trusting him with awe-filled respect, she shall be praised." Last verse. Give her the product of her hand, and let her own works praise her at the gate of the city. That's what a Proverbs 31 woman is. Cold.
Man.
Ice cold.
Don DeMarco cold, man.
Drop the mic cold.
What type of man I gotta be to get a Proverbs 31 woman? Wait, how do I start this?
My favorite part was that she smiles for the future.
Yeah.
Confident. She's confident because she sat and she's considered the field. She's planted the vineyard. She's a planner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing was that expensive linen or expensive wool. So it means that, not cheap.
Right.
So it's like, hey, you put the work in to get the fine things. You planned so that your family can live a nice life.
Exactly.
Because she's worth more than money. That's what it says. Like
more than rubies and
like,
pearls.
It don't matter, man. Like you could have all of it in the world, but like it does not compare to this because the return on that investment.
Any questions that are still on your mind that you want to open up to?
So like, how specifically did you get into like? Because like you got some singles out. Like I was listening to, I was like, dang, like this music is fire. You know, like I was like. Because, every now and then, like, you're like, oh, yeah, we're about to have a guest on. Like, here, give it a listen. I'm like, all right, let me see what's going on.
Wow.
I put it on. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Like, she actually can sing. Like,
oh, wow.
So how is it specifically that you got connected into that? And, like, what do you see for yourself, like, next 5-10 years as far as, like, the musical side goes?
I got into it, of course, like I was saying earlier, I was kind of groomed into that. Like I was saying earlier, we did the first weekend. And so we would all come together and plan, shows and movie directing and plays. And we would sing. And then we would actually take everything that we created and then go to the nursing home.
Right.
And then display all of our gifts. And so I've been doing it for my whole life. And I didn't really start writing for God. I've always written music. I got into that portion of writing music. And I would get beats, when I was younger and do things. I remember I went to Atlanta, and my cousin, she was like, I'm gonna. She ended up like quitting a job. Yeah. She worked at, I think it was Procter and Gamble or some. She's degreed all the way far and come back. It's very intelligent. But she was like, I know I'm gonna do music, and so she started, recording and all of those things. I went to Atlanta. I was like 17, 18. And I remember the bass of the song. It was so heavy. It drew me to the studio. And she was working on something. And she was like a mad person. And they were really trying to figure out this harmony, her and this other producer. And I know it's easy for me. So I was sitting back watching them, just allowing them to kind of work through it. And then I was like, well, how about if you try it this way? And I sang what they needed. And then I sang the octave. And then I sang something else. And they both were like. And they looked at each other and they were like, get the headphones. And that's literally, it was like a movie. That's literally how I, got back into music. And so it was her and I when we were doing writing for different artists, up and coming artists at Sony and Interscope. And it was so many different things we were doing. And so nothing really just, boom, nothing really just happened with that. And it was just music that we were creating. It was not necessarily for the kingdom. And so I finally, went down that road and I started touring with an artist, singing background, and we toured all over. And it wasn't like a really big tour, but it was different from what I was used to.
Yeah.
And so when I got back, I just was like, it's just not getting me anywhere. And I can't be following God like this and singing about this and rubbing on myself and looking crazy. I can't be doing that. I don't want to do that anymore. You know what I mean? Just basing the moves, off of the singing. And it was a whole thing. And I just didn't want to do that life anymore. And so that's when things started changing, right? And so I finally went into the studio and I wrote my first song with my cousin and my producer. And that was, I don't know if you heard Too Easy, but that was the song. It's called Too Easy.
That's the first one that was up?
That was the very first one. I remember in the studio, I was like, well, I've never written any songs for God before. So I was just kind of like, a little nervous, because it was more so when you go into the studio, it's like, yeah. It's pride, you know, it's me. I got this. I got my shades on and I'm doing this. And it was the most humbling experience. And I didn't even go in with that kind of demeanor, because worship and performance is two different things, you know. And so this is a thing that I'm submitting to the Lord, and then this is like I'm doing other stuff, and it's all pride that's you're riding on, but I'm riding with the Holy Spirit with this one. And so I was like, I humbled myself, like, I need you, Holy Spirit. I've never done this before. And I remember I had the book open and the beat was going, and I was like, I just closed the book.
Yeah.
You have this Bible, I don't know. And then I remember I got the hook of the song in the middle of all of that, feeling that pressure, and I just started singing from my heart, you know, and bam, I had the pre-hook, and then bam, we got the hook, and then we had the whole song, and I was like, oh, this is how it goes, you know. It's very cool, you know. It's really like, after I said that first line, the pressure just came off of me. And he reminded me, he said, it's different, isn't it? I'm like, yes, it's different. This is really different. He said, now that you're partnered with me, put it on me. It's not going to be on you. It's not your talent. It's not none of those things. You already have those things. Wait for me, and I'm going to pull through. I said, okay. And so that's what happened. And so that first song came, and then after that, it was like, okay, I'm going to take it really serious, you know. And so we ended up booking a flight going to Atlanta. I was just talking to my producer earlier on the live with him. His name is Pierre Medor. I love him so much, dearly. We went to Atlanta, and it was somebody that my cousin wanted to work with for a long time, and when she was doing music like 10 years ago. And so finally the opportunity came. He had an opening in the schedule. I think at the time he was working with Tyrese, and he was working with Usher, I believe. And so he had a break, and I was like, this is God, you know. And so we go in and we recorded, you know, a few other songs, and one of the songs we recorded with him was Don't Dim Your Light. And so this is a more recent song that's out, and I'll be doing the video shoot for that one. But that was a whole nother process within itself. I got to see like more of how when you partner with the Holy Spirit, how things just run and roll a lot more smoother, right? And so I'm in the studio, and this is nothing new for me. Studio is like, you know, it's like, that's what I do. And so I remember we did the whole song, and how we even did it, it was crazy. We were just in the background. We did it straight from scratch. And so Pierre's in front of the screen. We're behind Pierre, and it's like 5 of us in the room, and we're like, after we just prayed that room down and the Holy Spirit, the power of God fell, we come off the floor and we're like, okay, we know what we're going to do.
Let's work.
Well, I'm hearing this and I'm hearing that. Okay, this is the lyric. And it was just like a whole, we got caught up, and it was like, we didn't have to say a thing to Pierre, because his ears was in, he was listening to what was being downloaded to him. Right. The horns,
it's like y'all were tapped into that frequency.
We were
tapped
into not the streets, but the heavens.
Right.
And so he just really, really, you know, made the process easy. So we didn't really even say anything, but I was saying, like, God was dropping different things within us. I heard, you know, a certain trumpet line, and Pharaoh heard a certain, you know, drum pattern, and she was like, I think the hook is gonna go like this, and then we're like, okay, this is gonna be the gist of the song. And it was amazing. I think we had a 10-hour block, but we had done that song within a matter of no time. I can't remember exactly, but I just remember it was like that. It was so fast. And I'm like, man, when I used to write other songs, it used to take so long, you know, and it would just, the recording process would take so long, but
that's how you know it's real, right? It's like it just came.
It just came, and it flowed, and it wasn't a miss in the vocal chain. It was just like, this is what we're going to do. Stop, start. This is what we're going to do. Okay. The direction. I mean, it was so like, it was just perfect. Everything was aligned. And I remember sitting in the studio, and I just sat in the chair, and I was like, I've been doing music for a long time, you know. This was at the time I hadn't released anything. So I'm used to going to the studio and not releasing a thing, right? But the Lord is like, oh no, this is different. And so I'm in the chair, and I'm like, okay, what's next? What's the next song? And literally, he looked at me, he grabbed my, I don't know if you all have that relationship with the Holy Spirit, but we're tight. So he's showing me things. I'm getting visions all the time. Anyway, so he ended up grabbing me, and I went into this vision, and it was like I was in a green room, and I seen myself on a screen, a small TV. It was like I was watching myself on a small TV.
Yeah.
And I was actually in a stadium. And I remember I was, doing my thing. I'm rocking side to side. And God was showing me that. He showed me a glimpse of that and brought me back in the room. And I was like, the power of God was on me so heavy, I was trembling. And I just looked around at everyone. And they were like, they're talking. And then everybody was like, as soon as I came back, everyone was like, where did you go? What happened? What did you see? Yeah. And I was like, this is a big deal, guys. This is not just
it's not just a song.
It's not just a song, it's a whole thing. So I explained to them everything, and I roll with some like spiritual women, some heavy women of God. We don't play around. You ask us to pray for you, we're praying right now. And we might be loud. You know what I mean? So we were just rejoicing and very excited. And so finally when we got to release the song, it was like, wow, at the same time, I'm still waiting to see what God is going to do with the song as well. Like I was saying, there's a lot of things that I'm doing. I'm looking for, just assistance in more of how we can push it, or more of how we could market it, or all of these different things. And actually God has brought a team, a small team for that. So I'm just like, thank God, I've been waiting to see what's going to happen, but I already know because he's shown me. I just use my faith, and I'm just waiting for God. And so he's told me so many things. We recorded another song that same time. He told me it would be one of my biggest records, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to roll with whatever you say. I don't want to beef with you. I know I was acting like a little funny cat earlier, so okay, I'll just sit here and do whatever you're telling me to do, and just show up in the places. And so now I'm starting to see things, the ball kind of rolling on a few things. So yes, 1 single out, 2 single out, 3 singles. It's 3 singles. One is Too Easy. The one we put out after Too Easy was called Holy Spirit, and it's more like a soaking worship song. And then Don't Dim Your Light.
That one live.
Yeah,
I was like,
so I'm a whole nother person. I don't even know who that was. I'm gonna be honest with you. When I go up, I don't know, and when I come down, it's like, where are we?
Yeah.
Where did I go?
What happened?
Yeah.
Literally, because it's the Spirit of God. I'm just His conduit. I'm His vessel. And so it's pretty interesting. And I have an adventurous heart, like I said.
Yeah. So
I'm like flying. Where you want to go? Okay, cool. Let's go here. Let's do this. Let's minister in this place. Let's preach the gospel open air. Let's do this. Let's sing. Okay. And so it's kind of like that. Hope that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
We are running a little bit out of time, so I do want to give you an option. Do you have any questions for us?
I just would like to get to know you all a little bit more, like however much time we have. That would be good.
We got go ahead.
How much time we got?
I have a meeting at 7:45.
Okay, all right. So we got like a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Man, get to know us a little bit more. Shoot.
In a nutshell, I guess. Well, how long have you been Christians?
So
I'm Christian.
I'm a Muslim.
Oh, okay.
So I was born in. I'll tell you a story. So I was born in Kurdistan, which is in northern Iraq. And not the greatest place in the world to be born in. So mom and dad said, let's move to America. And, typical immigrant story. We came here with $200 in a dream. And growing up, it was we weren't really like the most religious people because we're in survival mode. So it was like, hey, we need to eat food. So it was like, oh, we need to pay rent, we need to do this. And so like I didn't really know because it was sheltered very well from me. And so growing up, mom and dad were always working, but we never had money. And then you kind of get older and you realize, okay, I have to go to college because that's kind of what you're just programmed to do. And so that's what I did. I went and became an engineer and got a couple engineering degrees, and I got an engineering job. And for the first time in my life, I had money. So I'm trying to think of what I want to do with it.
Right.
And, I'm thinking buy a house, buy a car.
Of course, yeah.
Typical travel the world, buy clothes.
Engineering is a good field.
That
means you're intelligent. That's good.
Thank you. It's all right. And I decided to go back to school with it. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice now for long-term gains. And so I go back, I get my MBA in business and finance, and I go back. Once I get my degree, I go back to my boss and I say, hey, I got my degree. Can I get a raise or a promotion, or like what's the next steps? And she goes, well, that's not how that works. You have to be here for this many years. You have to do this, and this. Also, this guy's been here for 30 years, so if anyone's getting a promotion, it's going to be him. And I'm years? Like, oh, wow. Yeah, so it's like, I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This is a bad investment. Yeah. And I'm like sitting there and I'm like, I'm upset, and I'm looking back and trying to think, what did I learn? What did this teach me? What is God trying to show me?
Right.
And I realized that I spent like 20-30 grand on this MBA. So I'm an engineer working 50-60 hours a week, trying to make a name for myself in the company and develop and take care of my family and, have a stable future. And then on nights and weekends, I'm going to school to get my MBA, so doing that at the same time. And then like I realized that the classes, they're teaching me how to make money for a business, for somebody else.
Exactly.
So hey, here's how to do Excel sheets, here's how to budget, here's how to do get like the optimal cash flow to save money here and do this here. And I'm like, great, I know all this information on how to make somebody else rich. What about my family?
Right.
And that's kind of where I we partnered with the firm, PHP Agency, and they've been, it's kind of what we do. So we teach people how to have basic financial education for themselves and their families. And we can apply it to businesses. We can apply it to CEOs, C-suite executives, athletes. Like we can apply it to everybody, but we want to make sure that everyone has access to the information. So that's where that's what we're partners in for about going on 2 years now.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
So that's kind of our crusade. That's our journey. So that's my story. I'll let you tell yours as well.
No, yeah. I mean, pretty much. I mean, well, I guess I'll share like how I came into contact with God. Because for me, so I grew up in a household where it was me, my grandmother, my grandfather. We lived together. That was like my first household that I grew up in. And my grandfather, not very religious. My mom's not very religious, but my grandmother is. Her father's father was a pastor in Shreveport, Louisiana, and like when Shreveport was like really small, like it's already small, but like when it was really small,
right?
And so my experience with God was always like every other Sunday, like once a month, like kind of thing. Like we would go to church, and it was like I didn't like it because it was like I'm getting dressed up and I don't want to wear these clothes, and like they're getting mad and I'm gotta wake up early and why can't I get a donut? like what's going on? Like y'all trying to get me to do all this, like for what? Like for that guy that we pray to at supper time? Like I don't know what y'all are talking about. So that was my relationship with God, right? And specifically religion was like just kind of this thing that like no one really put enough investment into like really teach me about. So like I guess naturally as you get older nowadays, like you kind of reject a lot of like what's put on you when you're a kid. So like naturally I'm growing up in like this modern age, right, where it's like people are more agnostic, people are very skeptical, people are very spiritual, but they're not religious. So it's like they want to admit God is real, but they don't want to give power to like Christ. That's kind of what my perspective was. So it was like, okay, I don't really know where I fit in this. Long story short, I go about life my own way. I'm about 22 years old, and I had just quit my job working at the grocery store because I was getting so tired of being the most competent one in the room and doing the most work and getting paid the same amount as everybody else who didn't want to do it. So I was like, man, screw that. Like, my grandparents built their own business through sales. Like, I'm going to go learn sales skills because I'm a great salesman. So I start working door to door at this company. I'm doing great for myself, like for the first time financially. I'm like starting to do like, I'm like, man, I can really see this thing's going to pick up from here.
Right.
But the company I was with, I don't think they had their alignment with their morals, values, and principles. So the company like kind of went under, and like somebody else ended up taking over it. And it was just a super stressful day. And like, man, no one's letting me in the house. Like, no one's even answering when I'm knocking. And I'm like, man, like this sucks. Like, so I just kind of had a moment where I'm 22. It's it's about a week and a half before my 23rd birthday. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, like, God, if you're real, like, just give me something, man. Like, I don't know if you're real. Like, I think I might be crazy right now. Like, I'm talking to myself in the middle of my car. I don't know. But like, if you are real, I guess it's worth at least saying something. Like, if you're real, can you give me a sign? And for the first time in my life, like, I literally just heard a voice. It was like I'd never heard that voice before. Like, you know, whenever you talk to yourself and you're like in your head, and it's like, but I know those voices. Like, I didn't know this voice. Like, it was a new character came into the scene. Like, was like, I love you, son. Wow. And that's all he said. And I wasn't even like sad or like, it was just tears started to like come from my eyes, and I was like, wasn't even crying. Like, I was overwhelmed. Yeah. Like, I had to pull over. I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, like, I gotta rethink some things. Like, I gotta go about this a different way. And then literally a week later, you know, I'm on Discord. My friends are playing like Call of Duty. Like, I'm just kind of on there. Like, we're talking like some other podcast guys I know. And he was like, yeah, man, you said you're making more money. Like, my boy Zach, he just moved down from California to Dallas, like literally a couple months ago. Like, he does something in finances, man. Like, you should talk to him. And boom, 12:30 at night, I get a phone call. I'm like, man, who's calling people at 12:30 at night? Like, what's going on?
That owns their own company.
Yeah, exactly. And he told me what it was, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm open. I need something new in my life. I came in. I sat down with a great friend of ours, Curtis Eatman, a partner, and I'm like, man, like, this makes sense. Like, I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. Like, why don't we just cut that time in half? I was like, this is the right platform. These feel like the right people. And then I found their morals were so aligned with God specifically and America first, which is a value that like I really like. I can get behind that. And then just to find out that it was all done through the platform of what Patrick Bet-David had created, and I had just started following him about 6 months before that. It was like, man, like, this is just confirmation. Perfect, yeah. Like, this is exactly where I need to be. Like this is God to take me out of where I was and to plant me here, because he's like, this is where you need to grow. Now, I'm not expecting you to grow overnight. Like, I'm not expecting you to become this great rose bush in the next year, but like over time, you know, like it's a rose bush, right? Like, you're gonna get prickled. Like, there's gonna be some thorns. But through that time, like, you're gonna grow into this just this spectacle, like, you know, this point where people can look at and be like, you started from nothing and then you grow into something. So that's my story, I guess. Wow. Yeah.
We're just getting started too.
Just getting started.
We're just because we've been doing this podcast it's been a year now.
Yeah.
And so, like, I mean, it's just really like, my vision with this is that we're gonna have massive events selling out like Cowboy Stadium, and we're gonna do live podcasts, multiple guests. We're gonna have comedians. We're gonna have artists. We're gonna have politicians, like, athletes, people that come and speak, guest speakers, debates, opportunities for people to come and do business. So like, the vision with this is like really, really big, and I want to make sure that people that are coming, I give them a platform. I promote them, and it's kind of like that saying, a rising tide raises all ships. So that's what Patrick Bet-David did. So it's like, the fact that I have an opportunity to even sit here and talk in this microphone is because of someone that created a platform. So I want to go and create that platform from other people as well.
Right. That's awesome.
All right, we got
this was great.
2 minutes. Perfect. Thank you so much, Miss Natalie Strong.
Thank you.
Thank you for the food, by the way.
Of course.
Oh,
I hope
yeah.
you have time to eat it.
Oh, we will. Don't worry.
We'll post some pictures on social media. So, well, I guess you guys wouldn't have been able to see, but yeah.
Of course. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Natalie.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm gonna take a quick